Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Tuesday tip, where in this video we're going to be covering all of the different hacks, tips, and tricks that I use when it comes to the brakes on my BMX bike to make them as good as I feel like they need to be for the tricks that I like to do. So let's do this in order of significance as far as what I think has the most impact on my brake setup. I think that the first thing I want to talk about is my upper gyro cables. This is a dual upper gyro cable setup that is actually a single upper gyro cable setup because this cable inner starts at this side of the gyro, goes all the way up out of frame here through the brake lever, and then comes back down to this side of the gyro with no ends on it, as you can see here by the phrase. But to be totally honest, those phrases don't mean anything to me, and until you have this cable set up and you rely on it for a back rail foof, I don't want to hear it in the comments. I've done tons of those with these exact cables, tons of tricks that rely on them, and it's been fine. As long as you pay attention to it just like you would any other cable setup, it's fine. It does break, but it doesn't break as often, and it's easier to swap out because all you need is a cable inner. You don't need the housings or anything like that. You just snip the old one out of there, put a new one in, put it back together, and you're good to go. I do have a video on this, and you can find it in the corner of the screen right here or here, wherever it ends up being, and I do think that that is the most impactful hack that I have figured out for my brakes. However, we can't talk about my upper gyro cable hack without talking about the mini hack that allows me to use it with this brake lever. This is the Odyssey Monolever in size medium. The size doesn't matter in this case, but what does matter is the fact that if you have the Odyssey Monolever and you want to use dual upper gyro cables, you're probably going to run into this problem and need this hack. I've got a couple videos about it on my channel that you might have seen before, but basically the gist of this is that this barrel adjuster for the Odyssey Monolever is huge, and it's oftentimes too big to fit through this guide that goes at the top of dual upper gyro cables. So what you have to do is cut a slit in it like you can see here, and then widen the top hole so that the barrel adjuster can go through it and screw into the brake lever. It's pretty simple, but it's absolutely essential to make these cables work, and I've been doing this far before I created this upper cable design with one inner cable. So with that being said, that's everything to do with my upper cable hack that I've got designed and implemented here and I've been using for years. Now we can move down a little bit, and I should point out that the gyro that I have is the Odyssey gyro that does have the set screws in it, and that's why I can use a cable with no ends on it. From there, I want to talk about something that is arguably interchangeably significant to my brake setup, and that is my lower gyro cables and how I have them fastened so that I almost can make them last about forever, honestly. So what I have here is a NARP in my brake arm with no screw in it. Then from there, I've got a straddle cable bolt, which you may have seen before. It has a hole in it. I just run the cable through it, loop it through this NARP, and I do have a video about this if you want to see it more in depth, but then we run it back through the hole in the straddle cable bolt and just pinch it. So the only thing keeping this cable in place is the force of it being pinched together like this. That means there's no pinch points because with a NARP, you've got that screw going into there and it just pinches the cable. So you've got your cable through the NARP and you've got a screw pushing up on it to pinch it, and that is what causes it to break so easily and so quickly. So I think that this is probably one of the most significant things, just in line with my upper gyro cable setup. It makes these things last so much longer than any other lower cables I've ever used before, ever. And something I should point out here while we're talking about all of these different cable things is the fact that I do use 1.6 millimeter cable inners. These are a little bit thicker than conventional brake cables. I know that there's some BMX brake cables that do use 1.6 millimeters, so it's probably on par there, but with that, I use those because I've noticed that they last longer, and that matters a lot to me because if you ride brakes, you know you don't want to be changing out your cables all the time. Now from here, the next most significant thing that it has to do with my brakes isn't something that I've done at all. This is actually something that Alienation has done, and it's their back rim that I have on here. This is the Alienation Vandal rim, and this literally has a coating on it that makes your brakes work better. So when you have this rim and clear pads, your brakes are obnoxiously annoying, but you know if you ride brakes that means that they work well. And I love this thing so much. Sometimes it will literally clean your pads for you because of the texture that's on it that is this coating. and it just makes your brakes work. There's not much more to it than that. I absolutely love it, and it's probably just up there, barely below the significance of the different cable setups that I use. From there, let's move on to talking about something that might not be apparent to the eye, but absolutely affects my brakes, and that is this little setup in here. I did make a video about this as well. If you're noticing a theme, I've talked about all these things in videos by themselves, but I've never brought all of them in their state in 2020 together in one hack guide. I did do a video like this a couple years ago, but there's a few things that I've done since then that I wanted to make sure I included in one big video for everyone. So with that, this is one of them. This, if you look here at my London mod, you'll notice that there's a few extra pieces here. There's some on this side of the London mod, some on the inside of the London mod. And if you take a closer look here, you might notice the fact that these are brake pad spacer washers. They're the ones that have the little convex and concave sides on them. And I've used this to angle my London mod to give my cables a more direct path to the brake arm. And this is something that I can't really measure the effectiveness of, and that's why I wanted to put it in here a little bit later, because I don't really know if it does a lot, but I'm assuming that this would make for a better brake pull and maybe make things feel smoother, because the more direct brake pull you have, the less friction that there is on these cables, and the smoother the brakes should feel in theory. Another thing that is visually obvious that I've got going on here are my Break Noodles. There's one on each side, and you probably have seen someone with these on their bike before, and the idea here is to put a bend on the cable housing that isn't trying to straighten itself back out. What I mean by that is that if you look at this cable, if I bend it like this, it straightens itself back out. So naturally, in a 90-degree bend, it's always going to be trying to straighten itself back out, and that puts friction on the brakes whenever they're being pulled, and at all times, really. So with this solid metal V-brake noodle here, it's just a solid shape that's not trying to straighten itself back out, which should equal a smoother brake pull. This is something that I've just done forever at this point, and I know that there's a lot of people out there who do it as well. And with this straight shot here that's shorter, we can get away with using one outer cable housing for both of our bottom gyro cables, and it just makes it a cheaper and easier experience to replace this whenever all you need to do is this short straight shot length in replacing them. With that being said, the next things in order of significance that could actually be considered hacks, tips, or tricks all have to do with greasing and lubrication of different areas of the brake setup. For instance, I lubricate the cables in the housings so that they slide smoother and give you a better brake pull. Other than that, I put grease on pivot points such as where the NARPs go into the brake arms or where the brake arms actually go onto the brake mounts themselves, making for a smoother and better feeling brake pull. And with that, these aren't entirely essential, but what they do is give you a better feeling brake setup, so you don't have to do them. But if you want to take things to the next level and make your brakes feel that much better and make yourself that much more of a perfectionist and OCD about your brakes, you can do these things, make them feel amazing, get obsessed, and then have to do it all the time to make your brakes as good as they could possibly be. So if there's anything that I left out or that you do that I don't do, let me know that in the comments down below. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this. If you guys learned something or found this useful and you're new here or you haven't yet, consider hitting the subscribe button down below, and I hope that we will see you tomorrow for another video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.